Inner Expeditions podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inner Expeditions podcast. My name is Aaron Harvey and I'm your host. I just want to thank everyone for tuning back in again. And this week I just thought we'd try something a little bit different. I know the first 3 episodes we've had other guests in, but you're probably wondering, who is this Aaron Harvey guy that's putting this information out there for us? So today I thought I would give you a bit more information about myself. I've got a good friend that lives down the road. Craig Kitson's going to come up and interview me and tell you some of my background and probably just the most recent 3 or 4 years that have changed, big changes in my life, which have sort of put me down the path that I'm on now. So I really just felt like I wanted to share that information with you guys as listeners so you know what I'm about, and it might give you a bit more detail into why I've decided to do the podcast and where that has stemmed from. So I hope you enjoy, and it's coming up. Hope you enjoy, and we will see where this journey takes us. Thanks. Hey.
Hey, mate.
How are you?
Yeah, good. So I suppose we just want to learn a little bit about Aaron Harvey, is what this podcast's about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think being someone that people don't really know in the podcast world, and I'm not a famous, well-known person where you can Google me. I don't think that's looking down that path. For me, the important thing with the podcast is just sharing, I guess, the more recent years of my life that have changed my course, where I was, and the things that spun my life around to put me on the heading that I'm on now with fitness, lifestyle change, and those sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've known each other now for 6 years, about that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah, since I moved up here.
And you were a very different person when I met you, probably physically and on your expedition that you're on. So when I met you, you were quite round, say that?
Yeah, I think
You've
if
got
you're going to...
photos on your Instagram there.
Yeah, I'll put some more up with this post as well on the Instagram page.
Yeah,
but I think I would have been probably... I think the heaviest where I weighed myself, I was about 105 kilos.
Yeah.
But I think at my heaviest, I was probably closer to about 110.
Yeah.
And I'm 5'6", which is I think about 166 centimetres. So if you can imagine that, I'm not a superly tall guy.
Yeah, yeah. And you were always the man at the barbecue cooking the sausages and the chops. And then I went away to Christmas Island, and I can remember vividly coming back for a friend of ours' wedding, and you had shrunk dramatically. And I said, "Azza, what's happened? What have you been doing?"
Well, the start, I think, when things changed for me younger, I was always quite fit when I was in my younger days. And then me and Renee, we started travelling around Australia, I think in about 2001 or 2002. And we travelled for the best part of 8 years. And with travelling, you're pretty much living a life of leisure and you're enjoying yourself. So that's when I probably started putting on a few kilos, having beers every day, probably not doing too many active things, and probably developing quite a not so healthy lifestyle. Things really stacked on more for me when I was working in the mining exploration game. I've been doing it for a few years. And I started supervising like anything. You go from working in the field and being active to working in an office, not being incredibly mobile. And at that stage, we'd finished travelling and we were living in the Margaret River area. So, we were going on break. We were pretty well funded, both of us working away with no kids. We'd enjoy ourselves on break. We'd go out and eat and enjoy the fruits that the Margaret River area has to offer. So I really
And just for those that don't know, Renee's your wife.
Yeah,
obviously.
Renee's my wife. Yeah, so we
you
started.
guys met when you were very young, yeah.
Yeah, we've been together a long time. Luckily, we both wanted to travel around Australia when we were young. It was a direction we both wanted to go in, and we managed to enjoy that. And we've always managed to stay together through everything we've been through and the highs and lows, that the roller coaster, I guess, that life can take you on with buying a house and having kids. And we've managed to always remain by each other's side.
That's another expedition for another day.
Which, yeah, that's definitely a story for another day. So when I think you always feel, I was probably always the guy that was doing stuff to the extreme as far as eating and drinking. Yeah. Not I wouldn't say a heavy drinker in the way that things are out of control, but I definitely enjoyed a beer most days. And you do things and you go out and you have a meal and that sort of stuff. But you always feel when you've put weight on that it's not who you are. You're still the old Aaron in just a bigger guy's frame. I always felt like that. I just didn't know how to.
Same with aging in a way. You still feel like the young guy.
That's right.
But you're just in an older body.
Yeah, and I was in my mid-30s and I felt like I was 50. I had no mobility. I wasn't doing anything active, and I really did feel old. So the thought was always there. And
so your life, in that stage in your life, you said mid-30s, you were doing what do they call it now? A Dido roster, a drive-in, drive-out?
It was fly-in, fly-out back then.
Yeah.
Out of Dunsborough. And
so that was a 2-week on, 1 week off?
Yeah, it was 12 days on, 9 days off.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of time off to do the things you wanted to do. And it was pretty stressful. I was running a drilling camp for a mining company. At some stages, we had as many as 5 or 6 drill rigs on a site. Some running around the clock, and you're managing maybe 60 people. And yeah, it's stressful. It's high end, high responsibility stuff when you're responsible for everyone on site. So when you got home after all of that responsibility and setting examples, I didn't really drink a lot on site. But you get home, then you'd let your hair down. You'd worked hard, you'd made good money, and not too many people I worked with lived down there, so we really, you made sure that you got your relaxation in and your good times in while you were on break, which definitely contributed to me really.
And I don't know if mining camps are anything like offshore facilities, but the food was always really good.
They can be, yeah.
Offshore as well.
I never really worked on mine sites. I always managed to avoid the mining side of things, and the exploration camps were small camps that we ran ourselves. Yeah. A lot of the time we did our own cooking and catered for ourselves, but what we did cook, we didn't really have a food budget, and we could do our own shopping and stuff like that. So it was always pretty good food as well. Yeah. And yeah, we did look after ourselves. I think you could really my way of looking at it was you should be able to eat on site whatever it is you would cook for yourself at home.
Yeah.
And I was definitely a big red meat eater as well in those days, and definitely liked a good steak. And
for one of your birthdays, your mates got you a spit roast, eh?
They did. Yeah, they did. That was when we moved up here. So jumping forwards to our move to Exmouth, we had found out that as soon as we moved here, Renee had finished working away. She got a job here working on the whale shark boats, which is something she'd always wanted to do, which was great. But we bought our house and moved up here, I think in 2014, and I think within a month of moving here, we realised that we'd fallen pregnant with our first bub, which was incredible. And, I knew that I've got to start changing my ways because I'm going to have these young people to run around with.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, and I was in no shape to be able to do that with the way I was living. So the thought was there, and we had Shyla in 2007, oh geez, that's good of me.
When's her birthday, mate?
She's 6 in December, so it was 2014, end of 2014 we had Shyla. And yeah, life was really good. It was obviously your first child, and you're doing a lot of time, spending time at home and relaxing with the family. I think it wasn't until I saw a photo of myself, and I think it's the one I posted, of me with Shyla. She was only a few months old, and it was the first time I saw a photo of myself that really shocked me, is how bad I'd let myself get to.
This must have been about end of 2014, early 2015.
I think it was early 2015.
Because we went to Christmas Island
Yeah.
February 2015, and you know, I don't know what was going on in your head, obviously, but yeah, I know you had a wedding coming up, and you were still this, you know, I'd only just met you, so you were still Azza, the old version, Mark 1, or Mark, whatever version that was. And then, yeah, we came back for a wedding, as I say, and you had drastically lost weight. So tell us about that process. I mean, you know, I can remember asking you, and I said, "What's changed?" And you said, "I got a Fitbit. Someone gave me a Fitbit."
Yeah, that was definitely a start. It was to get yourself, you know, you try and fail a few times. I did. And I had moments where I'd lost weight. I think at one stage I got down to about 95 kilos before we went overseas. We went on a holiday before we moved up here. But obviously holidaying in Europe, having a great time. And it didn't take long for those good habits to wear away. And I got back into the old ways. But sometimes it can be a series of events that really started turning the cogs in my mind, where I was really getting ready to do this. And one of the things was just thinking, all right, I'm going to have 2 kids soon. We'd had the great news that we've fallen pregnant a second time. And I thought, okay, I really need to up my game here, because I've got to, A, be active and be there and be able to run around with my kids, but 2, be around for a bit longer than probably the crash course that I was on. And I could tell that it was concerning Renee, my wife, and even some friends and work friends that I worked with. You could just tell that they just wanted to have that conversation with me, but didn't know how. Also at that stage, I think I watched it was like a Four Corners or an ABC TV show.
Yep.
And it was a female couple, and they were both outdoor people. They'd had a young girl they'd adopted, or I think one of them maybe was able to have the baby through a donor or something like that. And outdoor people, rock climbers, anything you can name, they were doing. And one of the ladies was really driven. She took it to the next level. She had an accident and became a quadriplegic, and her whole life of outdoors and her way of living was just completely taken away from her. And that really struck a chord inside me, thinking that here's this lady that's lived every minute of her life, and now it's all of a sudden not there. And here I am with all of these capabilities to live a life and lead an example of that, and I'm doing absolutely nothing with it. Thinking that back when I was the most stressed and probably living the worst type of lifestyle under the stress that I was under, I just saw the human body as something that you live in as a capsule. You destroy it. You're going to die anyway. Who cares how you live your life? Just work hard, play hard. Who cares how you treat yourself? That was definitely a mantra I was in when I was really quite stressed and making up for that when I wasn't at work by partying and living the good life. So that was one. And then once I'd sort of made that conscious decision that I'm really mentally ready to do this, I was talking with my boss who was getting ready to do the Avon descent. Is it where you
kayak down the river?
Kayaking that down the? Is it the? It might have been the Blackwood down south, the Blackwood River. Anyway, he was preparing to get fit, and he said, "I've been wearing a Fitbit this year. I think this would have been like maybe November or December of 2016, I think." And he said, "Yeah, I'm wearing this Fitbit." He said, "I've made a promise to myself that every day of this year I'm going to do 10,000 steps, which is a healthy rate. I think the average person does about 5,000 a day." And he made a promise, and he was on track to do it. It was like November or December, and he was all over it. And I just remember thinking, geez, that's a really good way just to promote me, even just moving more, just get those steps up. And a guy that was on site as well, he said, "Yeah, I've got a Fitbit. I don't use it. You can have it." I thought, great, what I'll do next year, 2017, bub number 2's due. I'm going to make 2017 my year to do 10,000 steps every day. So I got this Fitbit and I wore it before the end of the year. I thought I'll wear it through December and I'll just see currently what I do, how many steps a day I do, the way I'm living before I
give you a baseline.
That's right. And yeah, I was around the 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day mark. At work and at home, I'm still working away at this stage, still flying away. So then I thought, right, Jan 1, I'm doing this. I'm having a quiet New Year's Eve, Jan 1, we are starting. And I did. And that mental mindset for me, this is what I'm going to do, and it was on. There was no stopping. I was 100% locked in. I finally got around to making that decision. So, yeah, I started, and what I found, the changes straight away were doing things that you'd put off.
Yep.
Oh, I'll do that later. Oh, you get home from the beach or you've been camping and I'll unpack the car tomorrow. I just want to go inside. I'm tired. It's late. Let's just go and chill out. Where I'd look at my Fitbit and, I'm on like 8,500 steps. I'm going to do it now. So I'd unpack the car and put everything away and wash everything. And hey, next thing you know, I've done my 10,000 steps. Okay, now I can go and cook dinner and relax. And that just made me do all sorts of things in that way just to move more. So I sort of created a mantra as no shortcuts.
Yeah.
So I'd take the stairs. If there were stairs or an elevator or a lift at the airport, was most of the time, I'd have my backpack on. If there was ever a lift or an escalator, I'd take the stairs.
Yeah.
Once I was walking a lot, we got moved to a mine site that had been closed down. Mining exploration over the sort of downturn, I guess, in the Pilbara with iron ore going down. Our team had pretty much been evaporated to only a couple of staff. And the way that they had kept us employed was to put us on care and maintenance on these closed down mine sites, because there were still assets on site, there were still camps there, and we just looked after stuff, making sure that nothing got stolen. So while there, during the days, you get towards the end of the day and I think, I'll get my steps up. We had a little gym out the back. Didn't have any air conditioning or anything like that. It was just, you're in the Pilbara in a shed. It's got a little gym in there, but it did have a treadmill. So great. I'll just jump on the treadmill, and that's just an easy way to get my steps up. I'll just go for a walk.
Yeah, because your job when you were at work was mostly sitting behind a desk, was it?
Yeah, with the supervising side of it, it wasn't hugely active. And then once we went into care and maintenance, there was effectively not really a lot of work to do other than just maintaining a presence around the camp and doing site inspections, because the site we were at was quite close to the coast and the pits would be full of water because then they weren't there dewatering them to mine them, so people would quite often break in and go for a swim or whatever in the pits. So once I'd started walking, it didn't really take very long for the old walking to get a bit boring.
Yeah, I found that.
Yeah, so what I then thought was, okay, I'm walking for 20 minutes. Maybe I'll just try a little bit of a jog, a little bit of a run, just to get myself going a little bit more, just to start moving a little bit more. And I remember at the start, I couldn't run for a minute without my lungs just feeling they just wanted to explode. It was just so hard. But I kept with it. I had started improving my diet and eating better, dropping a lot more meat and cheese out of my diet, which I loved cheese. So I was really conscious on what I started eating. I started eating a lot more fruit and nuts in a bit of moderation during the day. They could fill me up, and more leafy greens and salads and things like that, and meat in moderation. Along with all this, I'd started running, and as hard as it was, I just knew I had to keep going.
So what targets did you set yourself early on? I found I'm not the fittest person, but I got a couple of dogs now, and that's great because it gets me out every morning to take them for a walk. But you must have set yourself some targets when you go from walking 10,000 steps a day to running for a minute and then running for 2 minutes, and then how did your target change?
I didn't really have a preset idea of what I wanted to achieve. All I knew is that I just wanted to move more and lose some weight. Definitely, the goal was definitely to lose the bulk of the weight. The running just became something I did. I never enjoyed running. I was never a runner in the past. I would do it for sport because I played football and tennis and cricket. Any sport you could name, I would love to do. And running was a part of me being fit to do that sport, obviously, with sports you had to run. But I never really enjoyed running. I used to think it was the dumbest thing ever. Like, why would you just go and run for no reason? It just didn't make sense. And I couldn't see how people would enjoy it. But then once I started running, I really started getting some results. I could run for a minute, and I just kept that up for a week, and it slowly became easier. I would walk for 20 minutes, run for 1 minute. Next week I could walk for 20 minutes, and out of that 20 minutes I could run for 2 minutes, and it was really slow and gradual. As I felt better, I was like, hey man, I'm feeling better. I can do this. And the weight just really started to fall off. I think I could almost feel myself every day, feel how much weight was coming off. And I think I was probably losing between 400 grams to half a kilo a week, which is pretty good going. It was really hot. And when things really stepped up a notch was when I consistently maintained that through being at work for 12 days. And then I could come home and still exercise and eat well, instead of coming home and going, oh, okay, now I can relax and do what I want and have a couple of beers with my mates. So I could still do that, but just weekends only.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were back by this stage, and I can remember you switching between no meat and then just having a little bit of meat, and then you'd switch between no drinking and then have a few beers, because you like your craft beers as well.
Yeah, and you can still celebrate achievements. I think at this stage I had started setting myself a few goals. It was small goals, just in the way of, okay, let's see if once I could start running for 5 minutes, that was a big achievement. I'm ringing home and telling Renee, look, I can run for 5 minutes. And Renee's like, look, that's fantastic. And I could hear in her voice that she was so happy that I was starting this change. She was always worried that with my health, how long was I going to be around for? So she was really happy to see that I was doing something about my longevity. And I was feeling good. So after a while, it was like, I can run a K. I can run 2Ks. Then I remember clearly running my first 5Ks. It was just incredible. It just felt like such an achievement. I feel like I'd almost climbed Everest.
Yeah.
Because I started doing this on a daily basis, not really worrying at this stage about pushing myself performance-wise. It was just more just getting there, what I could achieve these things at. So once I got to my first 5Ks, I started feeling like I really was starting to achieve something, and the weight was falling off. By the time I started probably working and training January 1, we were already pregnant with our second bub, Cova. By the time Cova was born in July, I think I'd lost about 35 kilos. And I felt like I was back to the old me. And I was running lots and loving it. And by this stage, I'd got off the treadmill. I'd started road running. And really, that's when I got hooked on running. Was just the addiction just kicked in. We'd moved down to Newman for work to do some rehab work on sites down there. And I even just remember running around Newman, just loving just running around town. I think I was tracking my running now on my phone so I could keep track of what my Ks were, keeping up with my distances, because road running and real proper running, not on a treadmill, was another step. It's harder work. It took my muscles a while to get used to actually having to propel myself rather than having something moving under my feet. And yeah, I remember like getting my first runner's high. It just completely blew me away. It was just so... I could have run down the street, ripped my shirt off, just smiling with my arms out. It was just incredible. I knew then I was on the running bug. I was hooked. This is what I was going to do. So that then from there, I think I started trail running a little bit, which took me to a whole another level.
Off-road.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of other things we can go into there. I remember I don't know whether you're reading books or listening to podcasts about how your feet work, interacting with the ground, and how you've gone through a few pairs of shoes to get to the right ones, and you had some knee issues, which is why you had clay on.
That's right. Yeah, so with that, once I started going down the running path, I then was looking at performance, how I was running. I started getting faster, and I would do 10K runs. I was doing interval runs. I was really pushing myself performance-wise. Not hugely compared to athletes, but for me, I was running 10Ks in under 50 minutes, which I was really pretty stoked with. I think my best 10K was like 48 minutes. And I was getting fit and I was looking fit. I was starting to look as fit as I felt, which was great. Right about that time, I started having knee trouble.
Yeah.
And that's when I remember getting this crashing knee pain that just started getting worse as the week went on, to a point where I couldn't bend my leg and my left knee had completely blown out. And I didn't know what it was. So I went and saw the doctor. I think I was in Newman at the time. Same thing, I was in Newman. And he said, it's just runner's knee. Just ice it and have a couple of weeks off and you'll be fine. So I did that and nothing really changed. This knee pain just kept coming back. So I cut everything right back, just really taking it easy, reduced my running days. I'm running less. And I think, as most people would know, injury really starts to provoke your curiosity, I guess. It's like, okay, how did this happen? How do I stop it happening? So to keep fueling the fire that I had, not being able to run as much, I started reading.
Yeah.
And I think the first book a friend gave me was a guy, his name is Adharanan Finn. He's written a few books now. The first book I read his was called Running with the Kenyans. And he was just a cross-country runner in the UK, and he decided for one of his books he was going to run a marathon through the desert in Kenya. And he was having issues as a new runner and started looking into improving his running form and looking at his choice of footwear as to how his feet contacts with the ground, which then started the wheels turning for me. I think in that book he mentioned another book called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, and once I read that changed a lot for me. He talks about this North Mexican running people, this tribe, I think they're called the Tarahumara or something along those lines. And these are incredible race of people that just run everywhere. They run hundreds of kilometres at a time, these ultra marathons, on nothing more than a pair of sandals they've made out of car tyres from the tip. And the emphasis on that, I think what I got out of that book the most is you can run on anything on your feet as long as your form is, you've got good running technique, which that's the key to your longevity and I guess maintaining no injuries, not having injuries, running further, feeling better. So I then started looking at how I run, my running technique, and how my foot makes contact with the ground. I was never really a huge fan of super cushioned shoes. I always liked to feel closer to the ground because I felt more stable than wearing really. So the shoes that I was wearing were still quite, I wouldn't say minimum, but they were on the lighter end of the cushioning because I just felt better being closer to the ground. Then after reading this and it really started feeling good in my mind and making sense, I started looking into flatter shoes, so runners without a heel rise, like a zero drop shoe they call them, and less cushioning. So I've instantly,
Sounds like you can do a whole podcast on shoes, mate.
I could, and I love talking about it, and I always talk to people when they come and speak to me, and I've had friends recently ask for advice and what worked for me on footwear and stuff like that after being realigned.
I think there's an interesting story here that I really want to get into with you, because this is all a fairly gradual change, and for you there's some milestones in there that they're probably big milestones for you that no one else sees, but there was a big milestone that everyone saw, which I can remember you going to work. At this point, you were driving in and driving out, and I can remember having discussions with you for weeks and months before this, leading up to this, and you were not happy at work. And I don't know if it was not happy at work, but more being away. And I know from my experience, I've worked away, and as you have kids, it becomes much, much harder to work away. But you still feel like you have to provide for the family. Tell us about that.
Well, it's perfect because that's right about the time where I was looking into footwear. All of this was happening. I was still going to work, leaving my family. I've got two little girls now, and my wife, which it's getting harder and harder to leave home to go to work. Not really a lot happening. Only working with one or two other people, and they're workmates. You didn't touch bases outside of work. People just go and do their job. When you finish work, you go back to your rooms, and you didn't really see them until the next day. So I was starting to feel incredibly alone at this time as well. You throw that on top of missing your family, you start to get pretty unhappy pretty quickly, which happened to me. Luckily, I had the running and what I was working towards. I don't know exactly what that was. Like you say, talking about goals and stuff, I didn't have goals. I just needed to know. I knew I needed to change something, and I would work that out along the way.
Yeah.
So I started doing that while I was looking at improving my health, not getting the cardio I was wanting at that stage because I wasn't running, because I was still having knee issues. I then started reading more and more. One of the books I read was an ultra runner named Scott Jurek, he's like an ultra running royalty. He'd won the Western States, I think 7 years in a row, and broken records, and he was just an incredible guy. What he was also was he was living on a plant-based diet, and that really struck a chord with me because I thought, okay, I need to keep the weight off. I was just terrified of putting weight back on. I was like, this plant-based diet sounds pretty good. This could be a way for me to really keep, maybe even lose more weight while I'm not running.
Yeah.
So I think I went vegetarian for a couple of weeks, and I remember after about 2 weeks just feeling so good. I just felt better. Even though I hadn't been running, I felt more vibrant. I just felt like I had more energy, and things were clearer. And I just felt so much better. So then I think I came across another book. I was reading like a book every couple of days, either downloading it on my phone or finding books off friends or whatever. I was looking, the whole Scott Jurek thing got me, the ultra marathon thing was on my radar after that, and that I just really liked the appeal of that. So the next book I think I found was a book called Finding Ultra by a guy named Rich Roll. And it was an incredible book. Rich was a guy who was I think on the eve of his 40th birthday, he was unfit guy, ate cheeseburgers, watched telly all night. And I think it was on the eve of his 40th birthday, he thought he had this epiphany as he sort of struggled to get to the top of his stairs. He needed to turn his life around. So he spent his 40s losing the weight. He became an ultra triathlete, doing some incredible feats. While he's on this journey, he's become vegetarian and then ultimately become a vegan, or doing all this on like a whole foods plant-based diet, which for me, it just seemed to like this was all happening right as I was going through these things in my mind. The material I was getting was coming to me. I don't know how. I just felt like these things were aligning and they were coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I started really, really dropping the meat and the dairy off my diet, and I was feeling better and better. Where it really climaxed for me as far as my emotional well-being, I was really struggling at this stage going to work. I felt incredibly alone, and things just play on your mind when you're alone and you've got all day to think on these things. I was listening to Rich's The Finding Ultra book. I was driving in and out to work by this stage, and I had it as an audio book, so I was listening to it in the car. And he had done all these amazing feats and achieved so many great things. And he said, I got fit. super elite athlete, but he was still incredibly unhappy because getting fit and doing all his achievements was incredible, but his lifestyle and his life wasn't completing that. So he was a lawyer. I think he was a Hollywood lawyer soliciting for people. He had a pretty good client base, but it just wasn't fulfilling his life 100%. So he realised that he needed to change his lifestyle and what he did for a living and how he lived. And that just struck another chord with me. I was like, okay, I need to seriously think about giving this away, because you get to maybe a few days before you have to go back to work and the mind starts to play, oh, geez, I've got to go back to work soon.
I can remember.
And you would be sad at home and you couldn't enjoy that time with your family because this is playing in me inside.
Life's a roller coaster.
It absolutely is.
You get this happy elation when you're going home, and then you get this dread leading up to your departure. And if you're only home for, 7 or 9 days, it's it's a roller coaster.
It was incredibly hard. So leaving home was getting harder, and being positive at work was getting harder as well. So the wheel started turning for me. Okay, I need to give this away. I don't know how, but it has to happen. Financially, we were in no way, shape or form ready for that to happen. We had a mortgage. I've got a young family. How am I going to do this? But I remember parts of the book reading and listening to this, and he's saying you just have to surrender to what the situation is and know that if you take these steps to change your life, what's on the other side, it's going to be okay. Even though you think it's impossible, and I did, there was a stage I think where I really struggled with my mental game, was thinking there's just no way out of this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And it got to a point where it got so bad, I had no choice but to walk away. I think the last couple of breaks that I worked, as soon as I got home, I was sad because I knew I'm home, but I have to go back. And it would have been 2 or 3 breaks before I left. We'd gone back to another site by this stage, and we were care and maintenance on a site. There was no one there but me and one other person. And we hardly saw each other. We kept to ourselves. We did the checks and we did our roles around the site, but we were pretty much just living on our own.
Yeah.
And I was just getting really, really down. So I think one break I came home and I was really not in a good way. And I didn't even want to go back to work at all. And I was like, I have to keep this money coming in. Our lifestyle is now living at a level where I was making really good money. I would have been on 6 figures, probably close to mid-range 6-figure salary. And we were spending it. It was just going. And we couldn't see where. I'd have to make this money for us to live the way we do. Anyway, I remember coming home and I really didn't want to go back at all. Come the end of the break, I drove back to work thinking if it gets really bad, I can always just come home. And I drove to work on Thursday, and I remember waking up Friday morning and I was just a mess. I didn't want to get out of bed. I think we had a small drill program running, so we might have had a rig and a couple of crew on site. So I got up, did the morning meeting, and my back-to-back crew were there. They were flying out and I was coming in to switch out with them. Got up, I did the morning meeting, and I had no motivation. It just left me. So after the meeting, I went back to bed and laid there, curled up for about an hour. And there just wasn't one part of me that wanted to get up and do anything. So once everyone had left camp, I think I went and spoke to my back-to-back for a little while, just about stuff. You know, you never tell people how you're really going. You got to put on that brave face. And
that's the Aussie greeting, mate. How you going? Yeah, good, mate.
Yeah, good. And I think I was in the industry where I didn't really have any close friends out there. And that made it hard because it's just no one knows what you're going through. So you always put on that brave face. You didn't want to show weakness either. It was the mining. I think it's changed a lot more now, but for a while it just felt like if you showed weakness, you were fair game. Yeah. Well, that's what it felt like to me. It probably wasn't that way, but the state that I was in, that's how I felt. And I had a chat with my back-to-back just about things, and I think while I was talking to him, I'd made the decision I was going to leave. So I went back to my room. I think I went back and laid back down. I cried for a while. then I think the first thing I did is I phoned my wife Renee. I said, I can't do this anymore. I was in pieces, absolute pieces. And I said, I can't do this. I said, I'm going to quit on the spot. And I've never done that before. That just showed the weight of the situation. And it was amazing. I just remember the first thing that Renee said back down the phone. She says, whatever you need to do, we're behind you 100%. And I knew I was doing the right thing, and knowing that my partner was behind me 100% just said to me, like, I've just got the greatest person in the world behind me. So the next thing I did was I phoned my boss, who was in the Perth office, and I resigned on the spot, just quit. And I don't know if he knew the full weight of the situation. I think he could tell I wasn't doing that well. And he sort of said, look, you know, your back-to-back guys are flying out this afternoon. Can you at least make it till Monday, where the other crew guys are coming? I think there was one other guy who was flying in late. He usually would have flown in with me. So can you get through to Monday? I said the only thing I want to do right now is get in my car and go home. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't really have a lot in my room because I was travelling in and out. I just got there. So I remember I just put my backpack and my things in my car, started my car, and I drove up to the office where my back-to-back was. He was getting ready to go home as well. And I just told him, I said, I've just resigned and I'm leaving right now. And I got in my car and left. And that was it. I think once...
How was that drive home, mate?
It was incredible. I felt like the biggest weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could breathe again. It was emotional. I think it was a 9.5, 10-hour drive, and I think I cried for a good, probably the first half of it. And while this was happening, I think word had got out to a few of my close friends that that's what had happened, and my phone was just, when I had small parts of phone signal, because I had to four-wheel drive, there was a shortcut out of the side. I could take the back way out, and it probably saved a couple hours of the trip, but it was four-wheel driving, remote four-wheel driving for about 2 hours. I didn't have phone range, and I was a long way off the highway. But every time I got a little bit of signal, my phone was just pinging with messages, everyone just saying how happy they were for me and the family. And it was...
In your old little Hilux.
In my little Hilux, yeah. So I just remember that as just a total relief. I had no idea what was on the other side, but I'd taken the first step.
I can remember getting the message, I think I got it from Renee, that you were coming back because you'd only been at work for a day.
Yeah, I'd left the day before.
You must have literally just driven there, basically quit and come back again. And all the questions that all of us had would have been going through your head as well. How am I going to survive this? But the weight that was being lifted.
At that stage that didn't even come into it. The worry about what were we going to do next didn't matter, because all I knew was that I was coming home to my wife and my kids forever, full time.
Yeah.
And I knew instantly that coming back, working away again, was never, ever going to be an option ever again. Yep. I'd made the move and that was it. And however we'd work it out, we'd make it work. It didn't matter. So I got home that night. I think it was about 5:30 in the afternoon, and Renee texted me on the highway. I was about an hour away. She said, look, I think you guys had the kids, or other friends had the kids. Pick them up on your way home. I've got a job. I'm working tonight. And it just completely blew me away that, man, she's a worker, and we were going to make it work. That's how we would do it, is together. And she'd had her first shift and she started at 4:30 that day. So
yeah,
it just continued to blow me away how much great support that I had from Renee. So the rest was a blur. I think I actually took some time off. I'd been with the company that I was with for about 8 or 9 years. So I had a little bit of long service leave, which they paid out. And I took 2 or 3 months off just to completely wash all of that away. But what I didn't realise until later was I'd built up incredible anxiety through that period, where I had lost confidence in myself because I just saw myself as this quite, not a weak person, but like I say, in that industry I was working in, you never really felt like you could trust people. And I don't think that's how it was. That's just how it felt to me. And it didn't matter how good you were at your job, unless you fitted in the right group of people or the right category, it didn't matter.
Yeah. There's a whole other dynamic there as well going on though as well. It's that you've changed many aspects of your lifestyle already, and all of your friends around you that are at home were adjusting as well.
That's right. And the people on site, they'd get together and have beers and catch ups, and I'd be in the gym and I would be eating salad for dinner, and I kind of felt like I had probably separated myself, but I was probably doing that to myself, but it felt worse because of the state that I was in.
What is that saying? You don't make friends with salad?
Yeah, yeah. I think that was on The Simpsons or something, was it? So, yeah, I had developed this incredible anxiety, which it took me probably 2 years to get over that once I'd come home. There was a lot of frustration because I felt like I needed to provide this great lifestyle and this free way of life. I just wanted to sell the house and start traveling and take the kids and show them this amazing world now that I wasn't handcuffed to this industry. But the anxiety I was dealing with was huge. Luckily, once I had started trail running, I started getting back to running again. I was looking after myself. You were talking before about the more minimal footwear, and there's a thing they call earthing or grounding, which is when you run on the ground and you can feel it under your feet. It's like you're making a connection with your surroundings. And I was really getting this out of trail running. I just fell in love with running off-road, dirt tracks, out in nature and in the wilderness. It was just such a cleansing, stress-relieving experience for me. It was almost like meditation. I'm sure a lot of people that run or anyone that does activities outside, surfing, freediving would know what I'm talking about. So I started feeling better in that way, but looking into, okay, I've made this move, I've made this transition into staying at home. Where next? So for me, the continuation of the transformation inside was starting to happen as I started to rebuild my confidence. The anxiety started falling away. There were steps along the way where I made big steps in climbing. It felt like I was in a pit and I was just climbing my way out. One of the biggest times that I felt like I'd made progress was I was listening to a podcast and there was someone on there who'd been to the top and it wasn't enough. The money and the cars just wasn't fulfilling him. This is quite a young guy. And he realised he needed to fulfill himself inside. And he said the first thing you have to do is just cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. Forgive yourself. For whatever it is that you're holding on yourself, you just need to let that go. And it was a podcast I was into. I think I was driving to Karratha. I was working for a friend's truck company. They'd give me a job. By this stage, I was working again. I was slowly building myself back up. Same thing. It was a milestone moment where I just realised that I needed to give myself a break for whatever it was that I felt like I was bad because I was leaving my family to go to work away. All of these things, I just let everything go. Another incredible moment. Was pretty emotional, and I just remember that. Another moment where I felt the weight really ease off my shoulders. It was the weight that I was putting there myself. And yeah, getting connected with the surroundings really gave me this almost like a spiritual connection to earth, my surroundings, and I started to feel, I wouldn't say spiritual inside, but a lot more connected to these amazing natural things that we had, which helped my mental state tremendously.
Yeah. It's probably, I don't know, we've opened up a lot of topics here.
We have.
There's probably enough.
And we can delve further. I think
plenty of other podcasts.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing here is, you've got this podcast now called Inner Expedition, and I think we've touched on a few parts of that expedition that you're on, and obviously it's ongoing. It's something that's we're all on, but yours has been quite monumental. I've noticed, watching from the outside as a friend, I mean, that the thing that struck me most was that moment where you quit your job. I've lost my job. I've been in construction, and so I've lost my job, and that there's a sick feeling that you get of how am I going to get through until I can get another job. And you did that voluntarily. And I can remember the jobs that you had immediately after quitting working away. And even those jobs you had moments of insecurity, and those are all other things that we can delve into. But I think that's probably, how long have we been going for now?
Yeah, we can keep rolling. For me, to probably end this part of the story or the journey, which are words I don't not huge fans of, but for this, I guess that chapter, closing that out with the lack of confidence and moving into being at home, was learning how to back myself again and being comfortable with the person that I was now becoming, living in a town like this where a lot of people work in boating, they love spearfishing and fishing, and here's me, this plant-based, so I'd cut my drinking right back to
and
really
barbecues.
Not drinking, barbecues, all those great social things which, this boring skinny vegan runner now does. And people always say to me, oh yeah, fat as was way more fun, when they sort of give me a bit of a hard time. But for me, I think the big one for me was being comfortable with me, with who I was. Okay, I love running. I love making conscious efforts to work on my health and well-being. And yes, I'm not a meat eater anymore. I'm not a big drinker. Probably not as much fun as I used to be. But it's a journey I have to make. And knowing that whatever I'm doing I've got to own that. I've got to be me. I think another book I read which really helped me on that backing of myself is a guy named David Goggins. I'm sure a lot of people know who David Goggins is now. He's a retired Navy SEAL. But his book, I think it's called Can't Hurt Me. And I don't consider myself to be as tough as him. Like he's a tough mental mindset guy. If you want to work on your mental mindset and toughness, it's a great book. But the bits I got out of it were you've got to be who you are and you've got to own that. And I started realising, okay, I'm not doing all these other great activities that people love in this town and that my friends are doing. I don't surf and don't get out in the ocean probably as much as a lot of my friends do, but I'm loving what I'm doing and it's giving me confidence in myself. And once I owned that and 360 made that comfortable with that, to then take that out, that changed a lot for my confidence as well. As like, okay, I didn't have to compare myself with people in other ways because I was a newbie spear fisherman or a hopeless fisherman and stuff. I think stopping the comparison is a big one. You don't compare yourself to people for any reason. Yeah. You're only running your own battle, your own race.
You had a big moment during COVID where you ran around the block a few times, mate.
The virtual ultra marathon. Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. You've gone from 2015 being able to run for a minute to 2020. I can remember seeing you starting at 4:00 in the morning.
You were there. You were my support team. It was pretty big.
And then you ran until 6:00 that night.
I think it was about 12 and a half hours. Yeah, I ran for.
And how far did you run?
It was just short of 68 k's. I think it was just short of. So I wouldn't consider myself by any means an ultra runner. What it was,
That's pretty ultra, mate.
It was. I mean, yeah, totally. But for me, it's like, well, I didn't finish. Technically, I didn't finish. I signed up to run 100 k's, and I ran nearly 68 in a pretty slow time. I did love being a part of that. I've always loved, I aspire to be an ultra runner. And I did work really hard at that. Once I had my knee issues fixed and resolved, no operations required. I've completely overhauled my running technique. Clay worked wonders with my back to fix that. So now I'm probably running pretty comfortably with no knee trouble, which I initially had. I was just, I was doing 50, 60, 70 Ks a week with maybe a 2, 3, 4 hour long run on the weekends and just really enjoying that for no particular reason other than the fact that I just really love getting out there. I love the process of endurance running where you've got to nail your prep, you've got to get your nutrition down, all of these things.
Yeah, you didn't have much time for prep.
No, it was pretty rough. I think I signed up like 2 weeks. I was running a little bit. I thought what I was doing was enough. What I wasn't doing was enough strength and weight training, which I think is still what limits me to go to that next phase. But I did get a lot out of that race. I pulled up short completely by choice. I think what the issue with my back was giving was that sharp shooting nerve pain down both my legs, which stopped the race for me. I felt fine every other way. I felt I could have kept running physically. Yeah. My legs were really hurting, which I was loving. That's one thing I wanted to get was that suffering and the pain, which I am learning to really enjoy.
You weirdo.
Going into the ultra running world. Having only run, I think, one half marathon before, I think, is the only one I've run is a half marathon. But I was running weekends. My long runs would be anything from 20 to 25 Ks for trail running. Pretty slow, easy going. I'm just working on that aerobic baseline.
Yeah.
With the ultra, I could have probably kept going all night, but it would have taken forever. 12 hours to run 68 Ks is pretty slow going. But I had in mind
68 Ks, mate.
Yeah, but I had in mind that pace to continue to get me across the 100 line. The pain I was having wasn't like I was in pain, which I expected, like muscle fatigue in my body and everything like that. The pain that I was suffering, that super sharp nerve pain I was getting down my legs would just stop me in my tracks. I'd had a really great day. Family and friends had supported me enormously that day, and people ran laps with me, and we really had some great conversations. And at that point, I was in a really sweet spot, and I was super happy to just call it. I had nothing else to prove to myself.
We did a little interview before that.
Yeah, that's that? Right. Yeah.
And I've got some footage from that day, which I should chuck up somewhere. I've got to cut it all together. And then I was going to do a post-run interview, which never happened, but this is kind of happening now. I guess this could
kind of do it, yeah. I hadn't even considered starting a podcast.
No, that was
back at that stage. I knew with career-wise not working away, I've really felt like there was something that I wanted to put my passion into, which is my running and a 360-degree approach to fitness, which is mental lifestyle as well as physically fit.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I could start a shop and sell really good quality equipment, not just the normal stuff that just people just go out and buy without thinking too much about it, but a small town, really small market. I just didn't really see how I would get that off the ground.
Yeah.
So, man, how can I share these experiences I'm having with people? Because I always see people out and about, and other people in town are doing similar things where they're turning their lives around. You just find yourself talking. If you're out having dinner, or you might be out on the weekend having a quiet beer, and you just end up finding these people and you're magnetised towards each other, and you end up talking about these experiences. And I just really felt like I need to be able to share this in some way with people. And the podcast just seemed so completely far removed from anything a few months ago to all of a sudden thinking, I think this could be the way, this could be me. So it's a short journey so far. I think this is only the 4th episode, but I felt like it was time for people to hear a bit about me and know the backing behind the episodes.
Yeah.
And hopefully they feel like they're comfortable knowing a bit more about me now than this unknown guy just posting these podcasts. So I definitely wanted to make sure that at some stage I would put that information out there.
I'll cut that video together at some point.
Great.
And stick it up.
That'd be really cool. I haven't seen any of the footage at all yet since that, so that'd be really cool to check it out. Maybe we'll go through it one day.
Yeah.
It's all good. We've got lots on our plate at the moment.
Yeah.
But I definitely want the ultra path to continue. There's some really, really great ultra runners in town. At this stage, for me, I really intensely did get into running for a while there, and I felt like it was kind of almost interrupting my family life, and it's like that's not what I quit working away for. So for now, I'm really happy just still running, still doing some training, but it's the ultra running path for me might not be just yet. I've got a young family that needs me and they need my attention. So anything I'll be doing will be outside of the family time. But at the moment, we're feeling like we're getting in a sweet spot. The whole COVID time has given us a great chance to take stock and really appreciate what's important to us.
So what's your big benefit from changing to vegan, running more, quitting your job, having all these epiphany moments, what do you think? How do you feel more centered, or what's the benefit?
It's hard to put all into one phrase or to try and explain it. I definitely feel I'm more connected with the outdoors. My stress levels are just so much better now. When I used to struggle to sleep, trying to work all of these things out in my head, how we're going to be able to change our life around and survive on a fraction of what I used to make. I think I'm on like a third to a quarter of what I used to make now, but it's pretty good that we've managed to reduce our lifestyle in a way so as it doesn't demand that type of money. You need money you can't help it. You do need money to live and to do things, but it hasn't become our priority. Making more money all the time isn't our goal. Like, okay, I need to get a job that pays more. It's like, why do I need to do that? We're getting by.
Yeah. There's
no pressure, and we're really happy with where we're at. I'm not stressed. I sleep really well at night. Nothing keeps me laying awake at night.
The big thing that struck me from my private conversations with you is being present with your kids.
Absolutely. Because these distractions aren't there. In the back of your mind, there's just nothing in that back of the mind worrying about other things. Or we're ticking over, things are looking after themselves. We don't have to worry about anything. We've sacrificed things. We're still incredibly lucky to have what we have. We've got a nice camper that we bought when we could. And we still do things. Don't have the boat yet, but that'll come one day, and it'll be a tremendous gift when we do get it. Like, it's a luxury item, which at this stage of our lives we don't feel like we really need.
It's cheaper to go out on other people's anyway.
Yeah, that's right. We're lucky. Everyone else in town's got a boat, right? So we don't need that. Just little things to take the pressure off ourselves. We don't do as many trips to the west side anymore because you've got to travel so far to do that. We've simplified our lives, we've reduced our budgets, and we're making do with what we've got, and we're learning to be happy with what we've got and not wanting more.
And you're both working?
We're both working. Renee's doing really well with her photography, and it just keeps us going. And we're at a stage where we're maintaining what we're doing, and we're not wanting for any more, and we're okay with that. Because,
and you're a team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a partnership, which is it's fantastic. I think that, just putting work into the day-to-day and enjoying, not worrying about, I'll be happier one day once this happens, or once we've got that, or once we could go and do these things, I'll be happy. It's like, no, I'm happy. Yeah. I'm working on being happy now. Once you're there, you don't feel like you're there and that's it. You've got to, being patient, you practice patience. You've got to practice being present. You don't just get there and then that's it. So it's being present with my friends. Like, when I'm talking to friends, you're playing with the kids, your phone goes away, you're involved in the conversation, and you're there for your friends because everyone's on their own path and they need it. You need each other's support, and it's people knowing that when you're talking and you're conversing with friends that you are there for them.
Yeah, it's interesting living in this town because a lot of people do work away. There's also a lot that have made the decision not to work away.
That's right.
I'm one of them.
Yep.
We moved to Christmas Island so that I didn't have to work away. But I'm lucky. I'm like you. I've got a wife that supports me and everything, and I support her. It's a team effort. So
it's the battle that everyone is living day to day life, getting by. It's a big thing, and I guarantee you, everyone's going through it. You have your ups and downs, and you have these moments. I'm not claiming to be anything. I'm no ultra super athlete, elite athlete. I'm a guy. I'm not a yoga master guru who, is super patient all the time. There's moments where I get frustrated and things get on top of you, but the things I am learning and the things I'm picking up are ways that I have managed to help me live
It's interesting you say that, because I think people think when they hear someone on a podcast or they see someone on YouTube that they've got it all worked out. And I mean, realistically, you're just as they're down the street, and you've bought a laptop and a couple of microphones,
And I just want to share
and you're sharing your story, mate.
share my experiences and put information out there for anyone else that can get a tiny bit out of it to help put towards something that they do. I remember Bruce Lee has always had these great mantras, and one of his sayings was, create your own path, take what you need from other learnings. Don't take anyone else's word for gospel. Just take what you need out of it, add it to your line of path, and create your own way. And I just think that's such a great phrase and such a great thing to use and to live by. It's your journey. It's your path. Don't compare your story or your lifestyle to anyone else's, because everything's different.
My mum
The
actually,
situation's always different.
talking about little sayings, mate, my mum actually gave me a fridge magnet when I was probably 20 years old, and it just had writing on it. It just said, go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you imagined. I think that's what you're doing.
Absolutely. That's great.
Good.
You still got it on your fridge?
Nah, the dog ate it.
Yeah,
The dog eats everything, mate.
of course they do. But if I
I
could
had it
sum
on there
up,
for 15 years.
yeah, well, you've remembered it stayed there, so
Yeah.
hopefully you can put that out for your family and stuff. It's just like I said, I'm no expert, I'm no guru in anything. I'm a guy that walked away and changed my life in so many ways in this new direction, and I'm so glad that whatever made that happen, I don't regret the life that I had before, because if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have sent me this way. Something had to happen for me to change the way I lived and the way I saw life, and it's really great. And I just got to continue working at it. I still love running. I still love being connected to the outdoors. I think in a time where a lot of people are probably more connected social media wise with phones, and a lot of people are in lockdown, which is just so bad. I think we've been lucky to avoid that. But sometimes you just got to put that screen down, put the phone down, go for a walk outside and be in your surroundings, be out in nature, just put your feet on the dirt or walk on the grass in bare feet and just connect, because it's such a great stress relief and it's such a great thing for our mind, and we need it. You can't avoid that. We need it, and you always feel better to get that fix.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could recommend. No expert in anything, but I know only because it's worked for me.
Well, I think we're all looking forward to continuing on this, for want of a better word, journey with you. I think that's given us a bit of perspective for who you are, what you're about, and it's also opened up some other topics for us to get into as well.
Definitely. And the other thing for me is a big thanks to come down to interview me. I know you've seen me go through the whole journey, and we always catch up and talk, which is always appreciated. So you know what I've been through and where things have been for us, and we've come out the other side, and you and your family have been there for a lot of that, which is appreciated from our side of things, and supported me through my running. You were that guy that just had the numbers, and I knew you would be, and a great guy to come and interview me. So thanks for giving up some of your weekend to come and
No, that's no worries, mate.
quiz me for everyone else. But
Easy enough. I hope we get to do some more. There's plenty of topics to discuss.
Definitely.
And we'll get better at it.
I think so, and I think that'd be a good plan down the track. Is having just episodes here and there, just with us talking about
Just have a yarn.
day-to-day stuff. Current events, stuff like that. I think it could be really.
I mean, I'm not on the vegan train yet. Never say never.
Yeah.
But we're all on our own path, and I'm definitely one for not working away. I made that decision after Barrow Island. I can remember my mental state after Barrow was probably similar to yours when you finished. So there's plenty to talk about. It's
incredible how you think you can't get by and survive, but yet by taking that step, you can. And things don't often present themselves until you make that step.
Yeah.
And you have to do it.
That's another thing. Is
some people are happy. Some people love working away and it works for them.
Yeah.
But if there are people that feel like they need to give it away but they can't because of the financial status, then you've got to have that faith and backing that what you're doing is for the right reasons, and you've got to back the fact that what's on the other side is going to be okay.
I mean, maybe I'm a bit slow, but I can remember that when I left Barrow thinking everything was okay. It wasn't until some time after that it sort of dawned on me how much that place messed with my head.
Can wear away at you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
Anyway, probably a good
That's
spot
great.
to stop,
I think it's a really good place to stop. I hope everyone enjoyed.
We'll do this again.
Definitely. I think that was really great. I think hopefully everyone enjoyed this little bit more of a look into my background and the things that have brought me to where I am. And what's on the show and what you listen to makes a bit more sense than the angle now that you've heard a bit of my most recent background stories, I guess. So thanks everyone again for tuning in. We'll be back. I'll try and get an episode out probably every 2 or 3 weeks at this stage.
Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying them, guys. Please feel free. I'll put a post up when it's out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and where I've been. If you're going through something, I'd love for you to post it up and share it with me and bring it up, because conversations really do help. And just bringing it up can be that first step into changing something as well. So
Absolutely.
Look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks again to Craig.
Thanks, Ezra.
And I'll speak to you all next time on the podcast. Thanks, guys.